Success is not supposed to look like this. A star leveraging 2 decades of audience trust to launch his passion project, with complete creative control and a global promotional army at his disposal. By every established rule of Hollywood, this should cement a new franchise. Yet, Dwayne Johnson's Black Adam resulted in the exact opposite. Not a launch, but a full stop. The star's brand reached its zenith at the precise moment the project was deemed a terminal liability. This is not a story about a bad movie. It is the story of a hidden threshold where modern star power stops being an asset and starts becoming the entire risk profile. Johnson's very public failure is the first clear map of a new rule in Hollywood's broken franchise economy. Chapter 1: The Brand versus the Character. For 20 years, Dwayne Johnson built the most reliable brand in modern entertainment. It was not a character, but a persona, a set of immutable promises. He was the unwavering hero, the charismatic leader, the bulwark of effort and optimism who guaranteed a predictable, satisfying victory. This brand became a proprietary export, a product that could be inserted into any genre: action, comedy, family film, with mechanically consistent returns. His pursuit of Black Adam was therefore framed as a logical evolution. The ultimate star brand would finally merge with a timeless comic book property. The assumption was that his commercial gravity would naturally elevate the character to franchise status. But a brand and a character are not the same engine. The brand is flexible, built on audience affinity for the person behind the roles. A character, especially in a shared superhero universe, is a fixed narrative asset with defined limitations, flaws, and moral complexities. Black Adam is not a traditional hero. He is an anti-hero, a ruler, a figure of ruthless pragmatism and ancient vengeance. The entire project became an exercise in trying to force one entity into the other's shape. The narrative was contorted to align with the Johnson brand, leaning into righteous vengeance, softening edges, focusing on power as spectacle rather than corruption. The marketing did not sell Black Adam. It sold Dwayne Johnson as a superhero. This created a fundamental first-order tension. The star's presence did not amplify the character, it competed with it. The audience was invited not into a new world, but to another iteration of a familiar, reliable product. The brand, designed to be universally appealing, made the specific character redundant. The very power he brought to the project may have doomed its potential to become anything more than a singular, self-contained event. The system had conflated star power with franchise foundation, setting a trap that would only spring once the real costs came due. Chapter 2: The Invisible Ledger. Every franchise is born from a simple premise. An initial investment must be repaid, with enough surplus to justify the next installment. For a superhero launch, this ledger is everything. The principal investment was staggering. The production budget for Black Adam was a publicly reported $200 million, a sum that does not account for the years of development costs, interest, or the immense overhead of a modern visual effects pipeline. This number alone establishes the stakes. This is not merely the cost of a film. It is the price of entry into the franchise arena, a debt that must be cleared before any future can be discussed. Against this, the film generated $393 million at the global box office. In a vacuum, this seems like a healthy return. It is the number that dominated headlines and fueled the narrative of a successful launch. But a franchise ledger is never measured in a vacuum. The gross is merely the top line. Between that figure and the studio's actual revenue lies a canyon of deductions: the theater's share, the distributor's fees, the allocation for participations. The headline number is a promise of revenue, not a delivery of profit. More critically, it does not account for the second, equally massive investment, the global marketing campaign. This cost exists in a separate, often opaque column. It is the fuel for the opening weekend, the price of making the headline number possible. It is non-negotiable and non-recoverable if the film fails to ignite. So the equation from day one was not $393 million versus $200 million. It was a far more daunting calculation. could the net revenue from the global gross possibly cover the combined weight of both the production and marketing debts? Chapter 3. Total creative control. The financial ledger established the stakes. Dwayne Johnson's role in the project defined its singular structure. His involvement was not that of a hired actor, but of a founding CEO. Through $7 Productions, he wielded unprecedented creative authority, from script development and director selection to final cut and marketing strategy. This was framed publicly as a virtuous cycle. The star's brand, with its direct connection to the global audience, was now seamlessly integrated into the film's DNA. Every creative decision could be optimized for that brand's equity. The much-publicized post-credits cameo of Henry Cavill's Superman was the ultimate expression of this control, a strategic franchise play orchestrated from the star's own camp, seemingly rewriting DC's cinematic future on his terms. This consolidation of power, however, creates a fundamental structural vulnerability. In a traditional studio model, risk is distributed. The film is an amalgam of competing visions and insulated departments. Here, risk was concentrated. The project's financial fate, its narrative choices, and its public perception were fused to the decisions and the personal market value of one individual. The control was real, but it was also a trap. It meant there was no buffer, no alternative vision to blame, no studio machinery operating independently. If the star's brand failed to translate, if his creative choices misfired, every facet of the failure would reflect back on the central authority. The very guarantee he offered, his personal oversight, became the project's single point of failure. Chapter 4. The muted audience. The first concrete signal of system failure did not come from a boardroom, but from the audience itself. The data that emerged in the film's first days was a profile of apathy, not rejection. The critical metric was the cinema score, a B+. In the genre of superhero tentpoles, where A- is considered the baseline for success, this grade is a silent alarm. It indicates not active dislike, but profound indifference, a failure to generate the passionate word of mouth that sustains a film beyond its opening weekend and builds the cultural foundation for a franchise. The audience was whelmed. The box office pattern confirmed it. The film's performance displayed a steep, front-loaded decay. It had mobilized Johnson's core fan base, who arrived on opening weekend, and then it hit a wall. There was no expansion, no broader demographic pull. The story had no hook beyond the star's presence, and that presence had already been accounted for in the initial surge. Furthermore, the social media conversation remained tethered to Johnson himself, his physique, his work ethic, his promotion, not to the mythology of Black Adam, the intrigue of Kahndaq, or the potential of the Justice Society. The character failed to escape the star's orbit and become an independent object of fascination. This muted response created a new, critical path in the ledger. The massive marketing spend had successfully purchased a strong opening, but it had failed to purchase the sustained cultural engagement that amortizes that cost over weeks and builds the requisite fan energy for a sequel. The audience had consumed the product and moved on. The machinery had worked flawlessly to generate a figure, but it had generated nothing else. Chapter 5. The collapse of the future. The most revealing data point was not in the box office totals, but in the corporate calendar. The timeline of consequences was immediate and total. Within weeks of the film's release, the planned architecture of the future was dismantled. The direct sequel, once treated as an inevitability, vanished from Warner Bros.' development slate. The much-hyped, media-driven rivalry with Shazam, a conflict engineered to generate narrative energy for both franchises, was rendered a moot point, an abandoned storyline. Most significantly, the cornerstone of the entire expansion plan, the return of Henry Cavill's Superman, was publicly and abruptly scrapped. The cameo that was marketed as a new dawn was retroactively declared a dead end. This was not a strategic pivot. It was a controlled demolition. The studio executed a hard reboot of its entire DC film strategy, placing Black Adam and its connected characters in a discontinued timeline. The project did not transition into a franchise. It was cataloged as a closed loop. The speed of this collapse is what escalates the stakes from a single underperformance to a systemic event. A standard underperforming film might see its sequel delayed or redeveloped. This was a wholesale erasure. It suggests the film's performance triggered not mere disappointment, but a fundamental breach of trust in its foundational premise. The studio's reaction was that of an organization severing a liability, not nurturing an asset. The future was not postponed, it was canceled. And that decision points to a financial reality far more severe than a modest shortfall. Chapter 6: The Narrative War. In the vacuum left by the studio's silence, a second conflict erupted, a battle to define the reality of what had just occurred. Two irreconcilable versions of the same event were placed before the public. On one side, Dwayne Johnson and his team launched a meticulous campaign to reframe the outcome. Through social media and strategic interviews, they pivoted the conversation away from theatrical box office. They spoke of profitability through ancillary windows, home entertainment, streaming data, and undisclosed merchandise revenue. The language was one of long-term value and foundation laying. The narrative was not of a flop, but of a misunderstood strategic asset whose true worth would be realized in due time. Warner Bros. Discovery, by contrast, spoke exclusively through action. Their silence on Johnson's claims was deafening. Their definitive statement was the announcement of a hard reboot of the DC universe under new leadership, explicitly jettisoning the existing continuity. They publicly wrote off finished films for tax savings. They took the actors' passionate, forward-looking narrative and met it with the cold, procedural language of corporate restructuring and impairment charges. This created a schism in perception. It was no longer a debate over quality, but over the very metrics of success. One side argued that a film could be profitable as part of a star's brand ecosystem. The other side acted as if the film was a financial contaminant, requiring isolation and removal from the corporate bloodstream. It is a contested space, a liminal period where the story of the film and the story of its performance are allowed to diverge completely before one is abruptly silenced by the other. Chapter 7: The Math of No Tomorrow. The narrative war could only exist in the absence of a verdict. The verdict, when finally tallied, was a matter of inescapable arithmetic. The true financial performance of Black Adam is not a matter of speculation, but of standard industry accounting. The headline figure of $393 million was a gross, not a net. The studio's share of that total, after accounting for theatrical splits, where theaters keep roughly half of domestic revenue and up to 75% of key international markets like China, was approximately $190 million. This is the actual revenue that entered Warner Bros. Ledger from the global box office. This $190 million then faced the total investment. The production budget was $195 million. The global marketing spend was a conservative $100 million. The combined outlay, $295 million. The calculation is now simple and fatal. $190 million in revenue against $295 million in costs equals a theatrical loss of approximately $105 million. This is before accounting for residuals, interest, or overhead. The film needed to generate roughly $700 million globally just to break even on its theatrical run. It fell catastrophically short. This math is the silent, definitive script that overruled every press release and social media post. It explains the speed and totality of the franchise cancellation. A $105 million loss is not an underperformance. It is a financial event. No studio greenlights a sequel to a property that incinerated 9 figures of capital. The balance sheet rendered all creative potential and brand power irrelevant. The corporate decision was not a creative choice, but a fiscal obligation. The ledger had spoken, and it declared the future unprofitable. Chapter 8: The Franchise Graveyard. Black Adam does not stand alone. It occupies a well-populated zone of industrial failure, the franchise graveyard. It is a pristine example of a modern cinematic artifact, the non-replicable event film, masquerading as a franchise launch. Its blueprint is now familiar. A major star, often with a producer credit, leverages their brand to commandeer an untested or dormant intellectual property. The project is framed not as a movie, but as a universe starter, with its costs inflated by the dual burdens of world building and star compensation. Marketing sells the star's personal investment as much as the story. An opening weekend is achieved through sheer force of will and capital. Then, the harsh metrics of engagement and financial return reveal a fatal disconnect. The star's brand brought the audience in, but the underlying property gave them no compelling reason to stay, invest, or return. This pattern has played out repeatedly. Universal's Dark Universe collapsed with 2017's The Mummy, a film built around Tom Cruise's star power rather than a coherent mythology. The Divergent series, launched as the next young adult franchise, could not survive the diminishing returns of its later installments. These are not stories of bad films, but of broken models. The system's failure is its recurrent confusion of a star's drawing power with the sustainable appeal of owned intellectual property. A star is a finite resource, their brand a depreciating asset tied to age and audience whim. A true franchise is an infinite resource, a story engine that can outlast any individual performer. Black Adam proved, at a cost of over $100 million, that Dwayne Johnson's brand was not the Justice League. It was just a very expensive key that could only open the door once. The graveyard is never closed. The next monument is already under construction, following the same flawed blueprints, awaiting the same immutable math.